good afternoon all. We're just going to give it a minute or so while people jump on here. So just bear with us. I hope everyone is having a good day. Again, just 1 minute. Okay, welcome and good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to look at how those in the real estate industry are utilizing ATTOM's API platform. My name is Jennifer von Pullman, and I'm the Director of Content and PR here at ATTOM Data Solutions. So let me give you a brief overview of items that will be discussed in today's webinar. We'll give you a quick introduction about ATTOM Data Solutions, as well as uncover the various data solutions that ATTOM offers before diving into what you all came for, which is the ATTOM API. Key points to be discussed will be the vast sets of data that ATTOM sources, how it works, and how that can help power your real estate platform, and or common use cases focusing on the real estate industry. We'll delve into our developer portal and show you how you can get started building your platform. Now, please feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation through the question box in your menu, and we'll make sure to respond within 2 business days. Also, as a reminder, you will be receiving a copy of this webinar. So now, for those of you who aren't familiar, ATTOM Data Solutions is your one-stop shop for premium property data with flexible delivery solutions. Our mission is to power real estate transparency and to fuel innovation across various industries with the most comprehensive property data. We have built a multi-source national data warehouse that blends property tax, deed, mortgage, foreclosure, environmental risks, natural hazard, and neighborhood data for more than 155 million US residential and commercial properties, which covers 99% of the US population. With more than 29.6 billion rows of transactional level data and more than 7,200 data attributes, our 9 terabyte ATTOM data warehouse powers real estate transparency for innovators in many industries, not just including real estate, but mortgage, insurance, technology, finance, marketing, government, and so much more. Our rigorous enterprise data management, or EDMP, involves more than 20 steps that validate, standardize, and enhance the real estate data collected by ATTOM and assigns each property record a unique ATTOM ID before blending with other data sets to ensure we deliver the highest quality and most usable property data to our customers. So now we also offer a variety of data solutions. Obviously, the ATTOM API is one of our delivery solutions through which much of our analytics-ready data can be delivered. But we also have such as bulk data licensing, market trends reports, home disclosure report, and more. We are also the first property data provider of Data as a Service, or DaaS, which is a cloud-based property data platform that streamlines data management. We also offer real estate marketing lists through ATTOM Lists, match and append services, and we can mix and match any of our data and solutions to meet your needs. Our data is not one size fits all. Our flexible delivery options give you a choice when it comes to how you consume the data and also how much data you wish to consume. We tailor our solutions to meet the challenges and opportunities in your industry and for your specific objective. So now with that, I'd like to introduce Sean Mooney, our VP of Product Management. Take it away, Sean.
And thank you for attending our webinar. So today I'm going to walk you through how you can utilize our API platform to power your business. So I'll cover some basics of what the ATTOM APIs are and some common ways our real estate customers are using them today. I'll end with a demo of our API developer portal so you can see how it really helps you to get started quickly integrating our property data into your applications. But before we get to that, I'm just going to start with a brief definition of what API is. Now, many of you on this webinar are perhaps already familiar with APIs, so this is just going to be very quick. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. This means it's a piece of software you can integrate into your applications to access ATTOM data. Basically, the API gives you a way to access our data in real time. So here's a simple visual to make that clear. When you need our data, you make a request to our platform. And depending on the request type you make and the specific API endpoint you call, our API responds with the appropriate data, which you then can make available in your applications for your customers or specific business needs. The beauty of this process is it happens in real time, and you don't need to store any of our data. We deliver it to you when you request it. Now, there's obviously a little more to it than that, and I'll get into some of the specifics in a bit, but this gives you a very high-level overview of how you would use our APIs to access our data. So now I want to review with you what the ATTOM APIs are and make you aware of a couple of key differentiating factors that makes our APIs stand out in the market. First, our APIs are powered by our industry-leading data warehouse where we curate and manage all of our data sets. And I'll review some of those data sets in a few minutes. We rigorously validate our data using a variety of quality control techniques, ensuring we offer the industry's highest quality. And that's something that's been confirmed by a number of customers over the last several years. And this data warehouse is the foundation for our APIs. We've platformed our APIs on cloud technologies to give us high performance and scale. So this not only lets us meet your needs today, but also lets us scale with you as your needs grow. And we power some of the most highly trafficked websites out there. Our APIs are standards-based, meaning integration is straightforward for your application or analytics development teams. They're REST APIs, which stands for Representational State Transfer, that can serve JSON or XML, and your development teams will recognize many of the conventions we use in our API. We won't go super deep on this today, but we're happy to talk about it if you're curious on a follow-up. Our APIs come with a robust developer portal, which is basically a documentation and test tool that we think simplifies integration work for you. The portal is available 24/7, so you can access it at any time. And I'll be giving you a demo of the portal shortly. Our API packaging and pricing allows us to scale with you. And by that, I mean, we get our customers into trials quickly, so you can validate your use cases and test it out. And then offering short-term and enterprise plans that allow you to start small or large, depending on your needs. We'll talk more about how you can start testing our APIs in a bit. And lastly, we wrap the API up with our industry-leading customer success model, meaning you have access to folks who can help with integration, answer questions on data, and help you succeed in whatever you're trying to do with the APIs. Now, our APIs are used by many companies from many different industries, including traditional real estate companies, analytics companies, and insurance companies, all of whom need access to our US real estate data. So let's go over how you can use the ATTOM APIs to power your business. Now, here are a few broad use cases that we see, and while these can apply to many different industries, I'll mention a few specific use cases that we've seen from our real estate customers. So in marketing, customers use our APIs to get relevant data for evaluating prospects, enhancing content for digital and direct marketing campaigns, and to measure the performance of campaigns. So a common use of our APIs for someone in real estate would be to include the value and other characteristics of a home to personalize any marketing materials with relevant content for the target audience. In sales, we're seeing a lot of innovative use of APIs in pre-filling forms and pre-qualification. For example, mortgage lenders will use our API to pre-fill in property information on customers' applications to help speed up the process of filling out the forms. Another example would be a large title and settlement services provider who uses our APIs to pre-qualify mortgage applications before they continue through a standardized workflow. For real estate sites, when your customer is submitting an address for a home to list, rent, or to get an offer, you can use property data from our API to pre-fill any other information about the property like beds, baths, and other characteristics to streamline the process and make it easier for the customer to complete the form. So these are a few great uses of our APIs. Now in operations, we're seeing APIs used to drive workflow, validate risk on real estate transactions, and improve quality control. A real-world example is an appraisal company who uses our API to validate human-collected information like property information and comparable sales as part of a broker price opinion. And last, one of the biggest areas we see our APIs used is in powering real estate products and platforms. And this is something we really pride ourselves on, enabling our real estate customers to build and enhance their online experiences, mobile experiences, or analytics or BI solutions right on top of our APIs. We have clients who have built their entire property research application, which would include property and owner search capability, as well as access to detailed property tax reports, mortgage and deed reports, and comp sales, all using our APIs. Another use in real estate, particularly with portals or brokerages that already have listing information from other sources, is to use our APIs to pull neighborhood data like schools or community information to enrich the listing pages with more content that's relevant for your end customer. So these are just a few of the common use cases we've seen for our APIs. Obviously, there are many more. It really just depends on the particular data need you have for your business. Now, APIs are only as good as the data that goes into them. And a few minutes ago, I told you how we manage data and how this drives our industry-leading quality. But I didn't mention the specific data we manage. Now, on this slide, I'm showing you what we call the ATTOM table of data elements. And it's a fun little take on the periodic table of elements. And it shows you how we organize our data into 4 main categories. First, the property and owner data. And this is our bread and butter data. We track a lot of information about individual properties, including property characteristics, mortgages, transactions, listing information, and ownership. In the neighborhood category, this is more about the area surrounding a property rather than the property itself. It would include demographics, crime, and schools. Since location is everything in real estate, when you couple this neighborhood data with property data, it really gives you a complete picture that end customers or your end customers often want when they're researching real estate data. The boundary category, this is spatially oriented data that includes parcel boundary, neighborhood boundaries, and area boundaries. A common usage of this data is for identifying which elementary, middle, and high school is assigned to a particular property, or identifying the specific neighborhood a property is located in. And our last category is analytics and derived data. So these are data sets that are derived from our other data. For instance, it includes AVM values that we create and model from other data sets. And we also have equity values and much more. Okay, so now let's move on to the demo of the developer portal. So to access the developer portal, you're simply going to go to the following URL, api.developer.attomdata.com. It's quite a mouthful, but if you go to attomdata.com and look under solutions for API property data, you can access the developer portal as well from there. So once you're here, the first thing I recommend doing is clicking this button, get a free API key. to create your 30-day trial. It's a very simple sign-up process, and once you've completed it, you'll be provided with an API key that allows you to start testing our API. And once you've created your account and logged in, you can go into the application section under account to find your API key. It would be right here. It'll have a default name, ATTOM's app. You can just edit that name by clicking this edit icon. You'll also have access to a dashboard that will show you your API usage. Now, obviously, this is a test account. I don't have API usage right now, but once you get started, this is where you'll be able to see your API calls and your usage. Under account, there's also a messages section. This is where you can compose and receive messages with a customer care team. So these are the areas that are really useful once you've integrated APIs into your applications. For the purposes of this demo, however, the two areas we'll focus on are the API, documentation, and samples and guides, because these are the areas that you'll want to explore to really understand our APIs and to view examples of how you can use our APIs. So let's start by going to the API docs. So our API developer portal is a very rich self-service platform where you can explore all our APIs and try them out. This section will give you a very good overview of our APIs and allow you to view sample calls and understand the overall structure of our APIs. Now, I'm not going to go through everything on this page, but I do want to highlight for you how this page is organized so you can understand how to navigate through it. So you'll notice we have a left-hand navigation that allows you to click to specific sections of this page. Our Get Started section under Introduction will give you a few tips on the best ways to get familiar with using our APIs. And these steps are some of the steps that I'll cover in this demo. You'll also notice in our left-hand navigation that our APIs are logically organized into 4 categories, similar to what we organized our data on the data table of elements slide that I just showed you previously. But there's a few slight differences to know. So under our property API, this includes all the information about a property, its ownership, and any historical sales data associated with the property. Within the property data category, you'll also find our atomized AVM and API endpoints for school ratings and details. Now, the area API allows you to access boundary data for schools, neighborhoods, zip, city, county, and more. You won't get the specific boundary shapes from this API, but you will get boundary information for a specific point. For instance, let's say you have a lat long for a property and you wanted to know the school assignments for this property, the school districts it's located in, and the neighborhood it's located in, and more. Then you would use this API for getting that specific information about the property. You can also use WKT or KML markup languages as request inputs for this specific API. Now, the POI API, and POI stands for points of interest, includes locations and information on restaurants, banks, shopping, and much more. Many customers use this data to identify businesses and other points of interest that are near a property, oftentimes using it in their application on an interactive map. You can retrieve the data using an address, lat long, or area search. And lastly, we have Community API, which includes information about crime, demographics, weather, and much more about a community where a property is located. There's a lot of data in there that you can play around with. An example of what you do using this particular set of endpoints is to put neighborhood information on a real estate listing page. And I'll show you an example of this in a bit. So let's head back up to the top to review specific sections within the property API. And you'll notice in the left-hand navigation that we have many of the same subsections available for our other API categories. We have overview, data sources, interactive docs for area API, POI API, and the community API. So you can review those at any time when it's convenient for you. For now, I'll cover those sections specifically for the property API. So one of the first sections to check out is our data sources. This shows the available data sets within the property API, how deep they are and how often they are updated. As you can see, for property API data, we have property records, tax assessment, valuations, historical sales, sales transactions, and school data. This is how often it's updated and the approximate count for each. Now, our interactive docs shows all the endpoints we have available within this particular property API. If you click the Get button for any endpoint to expand the section and click Try It Out, you can see a real response as you scroll down the page here. Now, what we've created here is samples of our endpoints utilizing some common query parameters. And these endpoints can be queried many different ways. So for instance, with this property ID, we set up the query parameters for min beds and max beds at 1 and 2. Now you can change this during your testing, but there's many other parameters you can use. So I'll give you one example so you know what I mean. If I click on the property detail endpoint, it'll show here that the request is pre-populated with an ID. Now, if I click Try It Out, it will show you the request using the ID as the parameter. Now, this is just an example we provide for you to try out this particular endpoint on this page and to get an idea of what data is returned in the call. But you can actually query this endpoint using many different parameters, and to check those out, you can go to our search filters right here. So the search filters shows you all the different parameters available for each endpoint. For instance, if I look up property ID using the search box here, it will return all the different filters I can use to return data in the property ID endpoint. As you can see, there are several different search filters that you can use to call this endpoint and get the results you need. So this is helpful for your developers to be aware of, and you'll be able to test these different queries when you sign up for a 30-day trial. Another point that's helpful to know is our APIs support pagination when there are more than 10 results in a response. So let's say you query one of our endpoints with a geolocation, and there's more than 10 properties in that location. You'll get pagination so that you can see all the other properties that are available within that query. Now, before I continue, I want to take a quick detour to explain what I mean by endpoints, because I've been using that term quite a bit. So think of this API as a menu at a restaurant. So I'll use an analogy of a restaurant menu. These endpoints are like items on a menu. So in a restaurant, you would place your order for a specific item from the menu, and a server would deliver you the food. And if you think of the visual I showed you earlier, in the API world, you make a request rather than an order, and you get a response instead of the food delivered to you. So in a restaurant, the food that's delivered to you is different depending on the order you place. And the same is true for an API. The data that actually comes back in the response will be different depending on the endpoint you select. So this request and response order, along with the menu and structure of the menu, is what makes up an API. So I hope that analogy is clear in understanding what an endpoint is. So now I'm going to cover the API structure. So the API structure helps you understand how the API is structured, what the main endpoints are for each API, and also the required headers. This is, again, important points for your development team. So I'm not going to go into too much detail around this, but I want to reiterate that our APIs conform to REST standards, meaning you can integrate our API in with other REST APIs like Google Maps that you may be using in your application. It's very easy to do this, and your development team will definitely appreciate this. Another helpful section I'd like to touch on here is the resources and packages section, specifically the resources section, which provides you with some common questions the data in our endpoints can help you answer. For instance, if you want to understand what data you can retrieve from our property APIs, you can just navigate to this section and take a look at some of the common questions that this API can answer for you, like what properties fall within a radius of a given point? Are the properties within a zip code with property taxes, or I'm sorry, are there properties within a zip code with property taxes of a given range? And can I validate the authenticity of the owner listed for a property? So if you wanted to know the owner of a property, you would call one of our endpoints under the property API to get that information. So now I'm going to check out the status codes section. So the status codes highlight the expected status codes from the system. So each API response has a status code, and we've documented here the different codes you could possibly see in your response. For instance, if you have a successful response that includes data, you'll see the status code of 0. Whereas if your response has a status code of 10, then you can refer to this document to see that an error occurred because an invalid date format was provided in one of our endpoints. So again, as you're implementing the API, if you have any issues that come up and you see the status code is something other than a 0, you can always come back to this documentation section to review the different status codes, and that'll help you fix any errors that you may encounter. Now, the last section I want to cover here is our data dictionary, and this is also a very important section that we make available in our documentation. So each API has its own data dictionary, and this one for our property API is fairly big. If you scroll down, you can see it's over 2,900 entries because there's a lot of data in this particular API. So the data dictionary is very helpful when you need to understand all the output fields and descriptions, as well as the associated API endpoint and JSON path. You can actually use the search field here to look up a specific field name to view all the information tied to that field. Now, I want to point out that this is different than the search filters that I showed you earlier. The search filters was to understand the different kind of filters you can use for each endpoint, whereas the data dictionary gives you the definition for each data field that's available in the endpoints. So as an example, let's say you notice a field in one of the endpoints called buildings num, and it looks like this. And you wanted to understand the definition of that field and all the endpoints it's available in, then you could use the search filter here to look up that information. And as you can see, the description is the number of buildings on the property. And it's available in many different endpoints. We have it available in the all events detail endpoint, the assessment detail, the AVM detail. So a lot of the data that we have available is available in our different endpoints. And you could use this section to understand the descriptions of those field names, as well as where those fields are being made available into which endpoint. So again, I just covered the property API section here, but you could explore this page on your own at any time to understand the different area endpoints and the POI endpoints that are available and the different subsections within those APIs. Right now, I'd like to take you through our sample code and guides section, which is also available under the documentation tab here. And if you click sample codes and guides, you'll be directed there. And these have been designed to help you or your developers to get started quickly with our APIs. So the samples and guides are here to help you speed up development by providing examples of how to make a simple API call or to overlaying data on a Google map. So making a call. This section for making a call walks you through how to make an API call in various programming languages. Python, PHP, Ruby, Java, and C#. Right now, we don't have the C# code available on this page, but we can provide it to your team upon request if it's needed. So if you click here, you can see the sample code is available. And this sample code shows you how to make a GET request to the ATTOM Property API to receive property details. Again, this is just a sample that you could use for making a specific API call, but it's designed to get you started quickly. And again, you could just click on one of these tabs to get the different programming languages, the code for the different programming languages. We also have guides for schools on map. Currently, we have it available in Java right now. And these two samples for schools on Google Map and Google Location Autocomplete, these are very common use cases for our customers. The first sample here for schools on Google Map shows you how to pull schools onto a Google map. So we've actually generated the code for you to do that. And the second one shows you how you can pull the Google autocomplete output address and use them to query our API. As you know, if you're developing a real estate site, the Google autocomplete is very common use. So we've created the actual code for you to pull out that address and to query our API to get the data back for that specific property address. So these samples cover real world scenarios, and they'll be very helpful for you to get started quickly. You can basically just copy and paste them directly into your code. Now we also have a section here called samples. And these are samples that we've created to show our APIs in action. If you go here, you can see an example of our school data displayed on a school map. If I click the school data sample and click this link called View Demo, it'll open a page to show you a real example of our school data displayed on a school map. So this is really to demonstrate for you what's available in our API for school data and how it's going to be easily overlaid onto a Google map. And it displays the elementary school, the middle school for this particular property. So the front end UI is what we've created, but the data being pulled is from our APIs. And I think it's a real great example for non-developers to see, to get an understanding of what our APIs can offer for your application by being fast, standardized, and delivering a breadth of data about a property in the neighborhood where it's located. We also have samples, as I mentioned, for points of interest and community. So again, with the community, if you click here to view the demo, you can see we're pulling in a property with housing inventory, age demographics, income by households, and more data. This is just some of the data that's available in our community for a specific property and location. You can review these again on your own as you go through the API developer portal. But this is just to show you what our APIs can do, both from a data standpoint and also from a standard standpoint. Now, if you're interested in using these designs as a starting point to display our school and community or POI data in your application, you can actually download the source code by clicking on this button, Get the GitHub Gist. Again, this is just a starting point we offer to help you jumpstart integrating our data into your site. You can also build your own UI to integrate with our APIs. So last, I want to demonstrate the power of our APIs with a sample listing site we've created using our APIs in the back end to deliver neighborhood data. So this is not a real listing site, but just an example. Many of our real estate customers, as I mentioned earlier, with use cases, they have real estate listing sites where they're pulling in data from other sources, and they may want to enrich their page with neighborhood data and school data from our APIs. So what you can do on this page is you can see down here in the comprehensive community reports, we have 4 tabs. To see our APIs in action, you can just click on one of the tabs for community info, and you can see how fast that data came back. This was a real-time call to our APIs, which delivered community quick facts, community summary, housing inventory, all related to this specific area where this property is located. So this not only shows the breadth of data available for neighborhood information, but also the speed of our APIs. So now I'm going to return real quickly to the API docs. So I just want to head back to the Getting Started section real quick to mention to you and your developers that we have ready-made guides for you to get started testing our APIs either with curl or Postman. And it all depends on how you prefer to test. Most API developers today use Postman because it is a very powerful API testing tool, and it is great to use when developing with the ATTOM API. And we've written some guides to get you started. So we have a guide here for using Postman and how to get started. And if you prefer to use curl, we have a guide here to help you get started. And because Postman is so popular, we have created pre-built Postman collections that you can import into your Postman environment once it's set up. So these would be here for property API examples and area API examples. So again, once you have your environment set up in Postman, if that's what you choose to use, you can import these pre-built collections. That way you can run API calls pretty quickly using Postman. So again, our documentation for the API and our sample codes and guides, it's all designed to get you started quickly testing, using, integrating our APIs. Particularly if you are in real estate. So that concludes the demo of our API developer site. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those questions. It's a very robust portal that you can go through at your own convenience. Like I said, I recommend starting out with a 30-day trial. That way you can really start testing and doing some sample calls. The 30-day trial includes 10 calls per minute at 250 calls per month. That is the trial out of the gate, and we feel this is enough volume to get familiar with our APIs and understand the data for most use cases. However, if you need to test at a higher call volume per minute and per day, we can increase those volumes for you. You would just need to reach out to your ATTOM sales rep directly, or you can call the number here, 800-462-5125. The sales rep will also be able to discuss with you our different pricing and packages to meet your specific needs. So thank you, and I'll hand it back over to Jennifer to discuss how you can submit questions for follow-up.
Thank you so much, Sean. That was great, very insightful. Yeah, and again, please make sure to submit any questions in the questions pane, and we will definitely get back to you within 2 business days. Now, just a few quick resources before you leave us today. Please visit our website at attomdata.com for more information on the ATTOM APIs, a link to a free trial of our developer portal, as well as our data elements, data management, and data solutions. We also have a newsroom on our website where you can read articles on market trends, case studies, and more. You can also subscribe to our news and events updates there. And finally, if you're interested in learning more about any of our data and solutions, please either reach out directly to your ATTOM representative, or if you don't know who your representative is, you can visit the Contact Us page on the ATTOM website. Just fill out the form, and one of our data experts will get in touch with you right away. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. And again, a reminder that the copy of this webinar will be sent to you via email. Thank you so much.